Hello and welcome to the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. Today I have a special guest for you, Melissa Deally. Rhymes with really. So that's how you will remember it, because I do too. I love it. And we're talking about discovering your toxic load. And when you told me this is a topic, where my brain went to, because when people give me the names for things, I was thinking like toxic emotional load. You know how like when people say, I'm taking a day off, and then they end up cleaning their house and paying the bills and, structuring whatever. I'm like, did you take a day off or did you just change roles? Because I see that so often. It's like, why am I so tired? I've had this time off. And it's like, no, you haven't had any time off. You've just done a different job. But anyway, what do you mean, Melissa, by toxic load?
Well, in reference to that specific phrase, which has a free gift for your audience, it is discovering the toxic load on our physical body and how the toxins in our environment get into our body through no fault of our own, through our waterways, our airways, etc. They're on our skin, etc. And they then create symptoms that society teaches us to ignore. And what I mean by that
Ooh,
is,
yes, examples, please.
what I mean by that is, you know, writing off, aches and pains and just saying, oh, it's aging, and accepting that versus going, why do I have these aches and pains? What's changed? What can I do about it? And how can I make them go away? Or, blaming symptoms on seasonal allergies. Well, why do you have those seasonal allergies? Is there something up with your immune system and your gut that we can resolve so that you don't have to tolerate seasonal allergies every year? Or here's a really good one. It's my genetics. Because again, people, and we've been taught through society to believe that, if your father had heart disease, that's in your genetics and you're going to get heart disease too. Or if your mother had breast cancer, we've all heard that, then you're at high risk of breast cancer. And the reality is our genes only dictate 5 to 10% of our health outcomes.
Interesting.
The other 90 to 95% are dictated by our lifestyle, because those genes don't have to be turned on. And our lifestyle determines whether those genes get turned on. So we can go, oh, my dad had heart disease. What can I do differently? How can I change my diet? How can I change my exercise routine? How can I change my stress levels in order that I don't turn on that switch? And it's the inflammation levels that, as they get really high, that's what will turn on the switch. So chronic inflammation is not a good thing. And we often hear that chronic inflammation is the root cause of all disease. It's not the root cause, it's a factor. I want to say, why do you have that inflammation? And get to that as the root cause. So if we keep our inflammation levels at normal levels, we need inflammation. If we sprain our ankle, inflammation is part of that healing process. We just don't need to be living in chronic inflammation. When we live in chronic inflammation, that's when we are at risk of having the genes for the diseases we are predisposed to get turned on.
I love that. So how
Instead
would
of
somebody know that they had inflammation? Like obviously if you've sprained your ankle and it's like twice the size it normally is, yes. But when people talk about chronic inflammation, it often isn't like obvious.
It isn't obvious. Sometimes people will feel it in their body if they have awareness of it. People who have aches and pains in their finger joints, in their elbows, in their knees, that is very often triggered by inflammation. And when I take people through a detox program that reduces the inflammation on their body, those aches and pains go away. We can also run lab tests. So it's just a simple blood spot card. The lab gets mailed to your home, and see what your inflammation levels are. And that particular lab is looking at your inflammation levels from the ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s. Now, those are our anti-inflammatory and our inflammatory essential fatty acids, which the body doesn't make, so we need to get them through our food. Omega-6s, the inflammatory ones, we get through almost all foods, especially processed foods, because they're in some of the cheaper oils that are used in processed foods. Our omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, are harder to get. We get them through wild fatty fish like salmon, sardines, anchovies, oysters, catfish, rockfish. And a lot of people are not eating those types of fish 3 and 4 times a week, but they're eating other foods with the omega-6s 3 times a day. And so we become inflamed from that. And the ideal ratio we want to see of omega-6s to omega-3s is 5 to 1. Where most people in North America are at, and I know you're in Australia, and it's probably not that different today, unfortunately, most people are at 18 to 1.
Wow.
Yeah. And when we see that in a lab test, then we can go, okay, now what can I do about that? And again, it's changing the diet, potentially supplementing because we're not eating enough fish. We don't want to eat fish, and we can support our inflammation levels with supplementation, and looking at other lifestyle factors that will bring that inflammation down, like detoxing, like managing our stress, etc. And we do this in baby steps. We're not trying to do everything at once. So listeners don't have to be like, oh my God, that sounds like too much. I can't do it. Over 6 months, you can make significant progress by taking little baby steps and change your health outcomes when you know how. So that's a very long answer to your question, although where your mind went is correct as well. And so I jokingly call myself the friendly toxin slayer.
Oh,
Because,
hang on, say that again. Friendly toxin slayer. I just love that. It's
yes,
got a nice ring to it.
and it's because I help people detox their physical body. We also have emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. And I help people detox those stuffed down negative emotions that are stored in the body that potentially cause disease later in life. I help people detox the mental toxicity, which is the way that we talk to ourselves. Are you talking to yourself as if you are talking to someone you love, cheering yourself on, and saying, I'm so great at this, I'm so good, I can build this business, I can do this? Or are you tearing yourself down? I'm not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, fun enough, whatever, right? Which conversation is happening in your mind, in your unconscious mind, that you're largely unaware of, but if you stop and listen, you'll know.
I think that's such a great point because I know that you know a lot about Australia. You lived here for a while. You still have some connections here. Have you heard of tall poppy syndrome?
I've heard of it. Remind me of it because I haven't heard
Okay.
of it in a
I'll
while.
remind you anyway, because there might be people listening to this who's like, what is she talking about? So like the tall poppies that, grow strong and tall, that's, you talk to yourself in a positive way. Like, I'm doing great. You're doing great, bitch. This is amazing. You're the best. In Australia, the tall poppy syndrome is where you cut people like that down. Like, don't get too big for your britches. Don't get too big for your
Mm-hmm.
bootstraps. Like, who do you think you are? And we're so conditioned. We're grown up. We're brought up in a society. It's like, you don't do this. And the reason this is particularly amusing for me today as a topic, my daughter is ridiculously smart. She's very, very gifted, and she knows it. She's also a cheerleader. So it's kind of interesting when you look at the way people are usually put into a category. It's like, are you a geek
Mm-hmm.
or are you this? And now she's decided that she wants to play AFL, Aussie rules football. And I'm like, how many categories are you going to put yourself in? And the fact that she
Sure.
has no qualms or gives no shits what anyone else thinks, because people are usually you're a geek or you're a jock or you're, whatever this. And it's just kind of like, and I'm like encouraging it. So I know a little bit about Aussie rules football. I played in primary school. The tryout is today. She decided yesterday she wants to do it. Never held a football in her life, never kicked one. So after school, we go to the local Big W, like you guys would call it Walmart. We're buying, and
Mm-hmm.
she's looking. I'm like, that's a rugby ball, honey. Like, lucky I know the basics. I'm like, that one won't do. And we're at the park, and I'm teaching her how to play this. And I can just imagine people like, what are you doing? She's never tried it before. I'm like, so like, let's just go. And what's the worst that can happen? That she doesn't make it, and we had fun in a field the afternoon and maybe in school holidays. But I think so often we don't talk to ourselves like, let's have a crack, let's have a go, let's try. We're like, you're not prepared, you've never done this before, what are you thinking? And we stew in that toxicity. And it's
Yeah.
like, why not have a go? The worst that can happen is you don't make it. You might be slightly embarrassed or have a bruised butt, because trust me, she was muddy. We got back and she was like, how am I so muddy? I'm like, because you like dove and stuff, whereas I was more princessy. But, that's why you'll make a good footy player and I only know the basics. But I love this that you've brought to it. It's like, why don't we talk to ourselves? Because the thing is, most parents wouldn't say, let's get a football and go run around the park. Most parents would have said, you've never played before and you've got no idea what you're doing. Don't try out. You could embarrass yourself.
Unfortunately, that is how, society tends to go, right? Is always, it comes from a place of love, right? They don't want you to feel like you failed or that you feel embarrassed, etc. However, it is holding you back from whatever it is that you want to be doing. And so kudos to you for, going and buying a football and then throwing it around with your daughter and encouraging her to go and try. Too often we think we have to have it all together before we even try something.
And whoever, sorry to interrupt you, but who in the world has it all together? Like, nobody
Exactly.
has their shit together. They're just putting on a really good facade.
Exactly. And that word try, I always ask my clients to remove it from their vocabulary, because if you have a pen there in front of you, I want to just have you put your pen on your hand right in front of you here in front of the screen. Whoever's watching this, do it with me. And now I'm going to invite you to try and pick up that pen. Go ahead and try and pick up the pen.
I teach this too.
Yeah. So neither of us picked up the pen. So we chose not
Most
to.
people
Didn't
would,
pick it up.
and it's like, that's not
Most
what I
people would
asked you
pick
to
it up.
do.
Exactly. And then I would say, well, you did pick it up. You didn't try to pick it up. You did pick it up. You made a choice to pick it up, or you made a choice not to pick it up. Either way, the word try means nothing other than giving you the out and allowing yourself not to follow through and do the thing. And so let's just remove it from our vocabulary and say, let's go for it. Let's make a decision to go to the football. I know that's the word there,
Yeah,
tryouts.
no,
Make a team.
she, whether or not she made the team, she still played football. Like whether
Exactly.
she was chosen, like to try out as in to audition. And I think that's the
Yes.
thing. Just because someone else doesn't choose you, because I said to her, if the school team doesn't pick you and you love football, we can find you a social team. If you really want to do this, you can find a way. And I think that's where people get unstuck. It's like, it's the school team or it's nothing. It's that person, it's the publisher choosing my book or it's nothing. Like, look at J.K. Rowling, who got knocked back by, what was it, 26 publishers when she tried to publish the first Harry Potter. Like, tried.
And
She published
Dr.
it because she was
Seuss,
going to.
and Dr. Seuss was turned down by 100 publishers.
Walt Disney was turned down by something like 300 banks to get the loan for the first Disneyland. The people who are like, I'm making this thing, who gets to come on the journey with me is a different thing. Like, even if you think about something like a podcast, the number of people who are like, I've been wanting to make a podcast for years. Why haven't you done it? Well, I don't know how. Well, I'm going to give it a try. There's the world today. You don't need somebody else to pick you up. You don't need a publisher to traditionally publish your book. You don't need to be like, if you're not chosen for the school team, doesn't mean you can't go play in the backyard. If you've the thing that you want to do, if you truly want to do it, you'll find a way, instead of just saying, oh, well, it didn't happen in this way, so it's not going to happen at all.
Exactly. And so that's another word that I really encourage people to use is and. It's this, you can have this and that.
Mm.
And simply ask the question, how can I? How can I have this and that? And just asking that question opens up your thinking to find the opportunities where you can create more than what you had been thinking when you were stuck in, if it isn't this way, it's not going to happen.
I love that. Have you got an example, like a case study or something you can think of that you can give people for reference?
Just let me think about that for a second okay, say that say that you're wanting to take a course, and that course has, a fairly hefty price tag to it. And so your initial reaction in your mind with the amygdala hijack is, oh, I can't do that. To just even say, how can I? How can I do that course and whatever else I have going on in my business? Because it's the amygdala hijack that so often has us stop doing whatever it is that we want, because our brain is trying to keep us safe. And this feels like it's outside our comfort zone. However, we can keep doing our business and do that course when we start asking, how can I? So it's, what support do I need in that? How can I? Can I move things around in my calendar? Do I need support with my children? Can I attend? Maybe I need 2 more clients in order to fund the course. Can I ask for a payment plan in order to make it work? How do I get 2 more clients in order to fund the course? Well, what if I found 3 different networking groups that I could attend, or a summit that I could speak on? there's all these opportunities that are just coming out of my mouth right now that are open to you as solutions when we say, how can I? When we say, oh, that's too expensive, I can't do that, we shut everything down. And none of those possibilities are there. And so how can I is one of my favorite phrases to use because it allows us to keep moving forward and find those solutions.
And it's such a great way when you don't see another option, like you'll find a way. Like I'm just trying to think, for many of us, if it's something for ourselves personally, like say it's a course, it's like I would like to do this, but, and then write it off instead of how can I do this? So very recently, in the last couple of weeks, my son requires a dental surgery, which is multiple thousands of dollars. And I was like, at the stage of the appointment, I did not have that in my bank to hand over the card to pay the deposit to, get his spot. Between that and the car, so like I hadn't even made the car yet, I'd reached out to people. Like had it been just for me though, I'd probably been like, oh, my teeth aren't that bad. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is for anyone listening to it. Like, why don't we go for things that we truly want the way we would for somebody we loved? I was like, my kid's facing impaction. I will find multiple thousands of dollars. I'd already got it by the time I got to the car because like I had found a way. But I think for us, as you said, you made some great examples. Break it down. If the price is this, how many clients do I need to sell? Okay, how can I find these clients? Networking, summit speaking, reaching out to past clients, making an offer to current clients to extend. There's so many things. Or as you said, can you approach the person? Would you do a payment plan? Ask the dental place. Do you do a payment plan? They're like, we need this much deposit and this is your payment plan. So by the time I got to the car, reached out to a few people, said, are you open for me borrowing this amount of money? How much do you need? Transfer it, pay the deposit, got the payment plan set, kids having your surgery, done. It was so easy. But when we're like, oh, like, and if for a lot of us, if it's something for us, we just put up with it. As you said at the beginning, oh, my knees hurt. Oh, it's fine. I'm this age now, or it's winter, or it's summer, or like whatever. And then we just kind of sweep it under the carpet instead of going, my knees hurt and this is really uncomfortable and I don't actually like living with this. But then in that case, it might take months of these changes. You're talking about small changes that, not necessarily going to be overnight, like raising funds or something. But why don't we treat ourselves like and if somebody asked us, because the other thing too, sometimes, you do have to ask for things. And this is so many people I work with. They're like, oh, I can't ask for anything. I don't want to be a burden or I don't want to be disruptive or whatever. And it's like, what do you feel when somebody asks you for something? And most people are like, I love to help. It's like, well, why wouldn't you think people would love to help you too?
Exactly. And that was something I had to learn as an adult too in my 40s. And it's that giving, receiving, it's a circle, it's a cycle. And so if you love to give, if you love to help, if you can't also receive, you're blocking someone else from being able to help you.
Yes.
And would you like to be blocked from helping others? No, because you love to do it. And it was literally when my kids were in school and there was going to be a strike, a teacher strike, and I was going overseas on business. This is like 20 years ago now, or maybe 18. And I said to the principal, I don't know what I'm going to do. My husband works. I'm going overseas. What do I do with my kids for however long this strike goes? I'm gone 2 weeks. I can't just leave them at home alone for 2 weeks. And she said, do you know how much you help other people? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And she goes, what if you asked them for help? And I went, oh, I can do that. And so I was like, oh my goodness, that was such an aha moment for me from the school principal. And I went home and I rang all the people whose kids had been at my house because I always worked from home after school, all the days that I was the childcare while the kids played, etc. And said, I'm going to be out of town. Can you take? And I set up a whole schedule of where the kids were going when, and they were looked after for 2 weeks. And it took someone outside of me to say, you can ask other people for help, right? And so often we don't realize because, again, societally, we're programmed, to be independent and do it all on our own. And yet that was never how humans lived. Back in the day when they were in villages, right? It was families living in the same house, the grandparents, the parents, the kids in the same house. And then in the village, everyone was like in and interacting, and all the adults knew all of the kids. And what actually happened is the women would get together and they'd all come together and go, okay, right, Suzanne, Monday's your day. We're going to all come together and do whatever you need done on Monday at your house. And then on Tuesday, it would be my day, and everybody would come to my house and all work together. And so they were working in community, whether it was cooking, cleaning, whatever they were doing. And now we live in our, grandiose houses with four walls, and we rarely interact with our neighbors in many cases. And we're not helping each other because nobody knows what the other person needs because nobody's asking.
100%. 100%. And I love that analogy because, it's almost taboo to ask. Like, it's like people think, oh, you might be showing weakness or whatever. But as you said, giving and receiving, when you give and not open to receive, I think of giving and receiving like inhaling and exhaling. They go together, or a door that pushes and pulls. And I think a lot of people who identify like as overgivers, they're always doing everything for everyone else, but have some sort of inability to receive. The way they receive is by over-consuming. So overeating, over-shopping, overspending, over-drinking, because you can't have one without the other. And then they spend so much time on the next diet or plan or program to try and fix their overeating. And it's like being open to receive, being able to ask, and also to deal with sometimes the rejection. Or is it even a rejection? If someone says no, like if asks me for something and it's a no, and we make it mean they don't like us or they don't care about us or whatever. Like a few people have asked me for some things recently, and I was like, I'm at capacity right now. I love this idea. It sounds wonderful. It's a no from me. Doesn't mean anything about the person as an individual or their idea. It's just that it's a no for me right now. And I think when we start to accept no's or expect no's, but not a doom and gloom thing, but a no doesn't mean I've been shot down. Fundamentally, I can't do this. It's like no from this person. Next. Like how would life be different if you were just like, next? How many people do I need to ask to get this, but not in a measure of my worth as a person, but just, who is it a fit for and who is it not?
Exactly. I kind of call it the no factor. What is your no factor?
I've never heard that phrase before. I like it.
How many no's until you quit? Well, your no factor should be infinite, because you just keep going. And you're absolutely right that a no from someone else has nothing to do with you. It's all about what's going on in their life, as you just explained. You're at capacity. That's why you said no. It has nothing to do with what you think of me as a person or the project or whatever I've asked you to help with. And that is what we always have to remember. And that's coming back to when we were talking about earlier, family, disencouraging us from doing things to protect us from failure and to keep us safe, etc. That it is coming from a place of love. However, it's such a hindrance. And as soon as we start to realize that even if someone else says no to us, if, I want to start a business and this is what I want to do, and somebody else might say, oh, I don't know, that's pretty risky. Probably shouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I don't think that's very smart. Well, really, that's all about them. They don't have your skill set. They don't have your dreams. They don't have your passion for whatever it is that you've decided to do. And yet, how many times do people allow themselves to be talked out of it by someone else? Because they've got multiple people saying the same thing, all who are trying to protect them from potential bankruptcy or shame or failure or whatever.
Yeah. And also the people you're asking, are they even interested?
Exactly. Exactly. And what if you went out and followed your passion and your purpose and you rocked it? Because that's what you're meant to be doing. And that's the beautiful thing about when we shift the mindset. And so that's what I talk about when I talk about, detoxing the mindset, is let's get out of all of those societal programming and shift into a mindset that actually serves you.
I love that. So you've got a quiz, and I'll link the quiz into the show notes, but I haven't asked anything about this quiz because I know it's called Discover Your Toxic Load. Does it go into the different areas like physical, mental? Is that the kind of thing, or is it more
physical? It's all physical, and it's a starting point to bring awareness to people for the symptoms that they are actually experiencing, and that because of the way we're trained in society to ignore our symptoms or just, write them off as aging or genetics or whatever, we don't bring them into our awareness. And so this quiz is bringing them into your awareness, because every single one of these symptoms is your body saying, hello, hello, there's something a little bit off here and I'd like to come back into balance. So if you could address it, that would be really helpful. And we're out of balance because of the impact that toxins have on our body. And when that toxic load gets high, our liver can't do its job, can't even get them out of the body. It's storing them in our fat closets. That causes inflammation. And we know what happens then, right? So when we understand that, then we're like, okay, now I know this. Now, how can I do something about it, right? And I guide people through detoxes. And the reason that this is my starting point for everything is, first of all, if you're going to do any kind of protocol, change your diet, start to eat better, take supplements, putting all of that goodness in on a bunch of sludge, some of it gets where it needs to go, and a lot of it just gets excreted out with some of the sludge, right? And you don't get results very quickly. When we clear your detox pathways so that all the goodness can get where it needs to go, you start feeling better really quickly because your body's actually getting what it wants and it can do something with it. And this is a key factor in all of the chronic illness that we have in the world today, because the three main factors in chronic illness is your high toxic load, your low nutrient uptake, and we have very nutrient depleted soils, plus all the processed food industry has no nutrients in it either, and our stress levels. And we can address all three, and we need to address all three. And when we address all three, the body can heal. Because when we create the environment for the body to heal, it will do so very quickly. And then when it's in balance, it can do that. When it's depleted from lack of nutrients or too toxic, it can't heal itself. So we have to do some support, take out the toxins, put in the supplements in order to support it. It will come into balance and then heal itself.
And I love the lowering the stress too, because I think sometimes,
Mm.
if your stress hormones are running rife and you're doing all the right things, but, it's kind of, the body is amazing at, regulating. Like, I'm thinking of for whatever random reason, labor is coming to mind. Like, if a woman is in labor and then a stressful thing happens, like one of my friends, when her husband was driving to the hospital, they were both okay. They had a fender bender, but the accident, labor stopped. Like, that was it. Body was like,
Oh yeah,
nope.
it will. It
And
will.
I know they encourage you when you're in early labor to walk. And I had another friend and she was walking. Yes, I live in Australia. And then came across a snake. She is fine. Don't worry. But her body's reaction, like, snake, labor, stopped. And
Yep.
so when we are really stressed, our system is going to divert
Yep.
resources to
It
keeping us
does.
alive, like escape
Yes.
the snake or get out of the car or whatever, and not do the thing. And I only learned this yesterday. I haven't had a chance to Google it and see if it's true, but somebody told me that panda bears, I don't know if you've heard this before, are a species that can alter the duration of their pregnancy from either 3 months up to as much as 18 months. Like, a lot of the outside things are taken into effect.
Right.
And I'm like,
Wow.
isn't that fascinating? But
I
we don't
haven't heard that. I
often
love panda
look at
bears. I hadn't heard that.
stress. Well, apparently that's why panda births are so celebrated. Anyway, I'm going to check that. I haven't fact checked that yet. So if you're listening to this, feel free to put something in the chat box and correct me. I'm never offended when people are like, actually, it's this. But then
Yeah.
again, how much can we trust Google sometimes? I remember my son recently is like, I saw it on YouTube, so it must be true. I'm like, dude, people can put anything on YouTube. But anyway,
Yeah.
all that to say, sometimes when you are doing the right things, addressing what you're eating and supplementing and whatever, but you are that mired in stress and you're like, why are these things not happening? Is because the body's prioritizing elsewhere
Yes.
because of how stressed you are.
Absolutely. And I talk about all that all the time, particularly when it comes to women's hormones. Because when the body is trying to run away from a lion or a tiger and get you to safety, it has to produce more cortisol to do that. So it stops producing progesterone because you're not going to stop and make a baby in that moment. It also shuts down your immune system because that takes energy that it doesn't have right now. It needs the energy elsewhere, and it shuts down digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are in that state for too long, the hormones get out of balance. Progesterone gets really low. We get into an estrogen dominant state, which we don't want to be in because that can slow the thyroid. It can cause insulin issues. It's a known, cause of some breast cancers. And so understanding that allows people to make the lifestyle changes to bring their stress under control. And the first place is that we work with is sleep, because a lot of people aren't sleeping because of the stress. And we can
Yes.
focus on our sleep more easily than we can focus on the, stress from work or the stress from getting the kids out the door in the morning, et cetera, et cetera.
That's totally a thing. We're on the last day of term here, and then we're going to school holidays. And I was like, 2 weeks of not having to get everybody ready and out the door. That's a win. So,
Yeah.
Melissa, this has been brilliant. If people actually just introduce yourself, what do you do? Where can people find you? And yeah, I know we've mentioned you've got this Discover Your Toxic Load quiz, which I will put in the show notes. But yeah, give people your bio.
Yeah, so my website is yourguidedhealthjourney.com. I'm an integrative mind body health practitioner, and that's the big mouthful, which is why I say I jokingly call myself the friendly toxin slayer. And so I run functional medicine lab tests that get mailed to people's homes in order to figure out where the imbalances are and the nutritional deficiencies in order to help guide people's bodies back into balance so it can heal. However, it's not enough to look at the physical body. We must look at the emotional toxicity. We must look at the mental toxicity and the spiritual toxicity, which my definition of that is just spiritual misalignment. Why are you here on this planet? And are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Or are you doing something that you hate, right?
Mm.
All of those things create symptoms. And when the symptoms show up in the physical body, they've already moved through the other 3 bodies. So we have to address them going back up as well to clear and to get to optimal health. Otherwise, it'll show up a little bit later in 2 years. You'll have a different symptom because it's the emotional body going, hello, you didn't address me. I want you to address me, right? So we look at whole body health, looking at all the bodies. And I use the tools of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy in that process as well. And then I have a podcast. It's called Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call. And that's all about just giving people bite-sized pieces of information of things that they can do in their life on their healing journey to live a better lifestyle, because there's so much that we can do in order to make sure that we don't get a chronic health diagnosis. It does take some proactive action versus sitting back and doing nothing. We get sick, we go to the doctor, and we expect them to fix us. That's not how it works. We have to take responsibility for our health. And when we do, there's so much that we can do. And that's what I love to share with people. And I bring on other practitioners so that you can learn about other healing modalities, as well as other people who have healed themselves. And the purpose of sharing those stories is to give people in their health journey hope. Because if one person's done it, you can do it too.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me, Melissa. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.